What's up, gamers? We are back with some modern, and we've got a exciting one for you all today because this one is showing off kind of one of the newest decks that is in modern, and that's that Temur Prowess deck. So I'm pretty excited for this one. We are also seeing Murktide, so it's going to be kind of a very interesting matchup: blue-red versus essentially blue-red. The teamer does get access to a couple of goodies in there that we'll talk about some of the stuff that it gets access to, but mainly it's the sideboard that it's running because it's got that new, of course, one cost green sorcery there. But this one's going to be really exciting. So if you guys have been following along with the channel, you know we're doing our twice a week uploads now, one on Mondays, one on Thursday. We've got some exciting content already in the queue for you guys to be able to enjoy. So, of course, we've got this one today on Monday, and then the one coming up on Thursday is going to be showing off another newer deck, a Vengevine Cauldron deck. And then we've got some, of course, coming up soon afterward. We'll be having some Tron versus some hardened scales. There's some infect sprinkled in here, some more domain. So we got a lot of fun different decks. I think we even got some mono black adventures going on here. But immediately it's like, hey, can I have this monkey? No, you cannot have this monkey. All right, well, I guess I'll just try to set up and prepare for something here. But yeah, we got a lot of awesome matches planned because Modern Horizons 3 is coming out soon. So we're trying to get as much content queued up for you all to enjoy with Modern, leading things up here. Dragon's Rage Channeler, phenomenal card. Both lists are going to be running Dragon's Raids because not only is it a little consistent threat of having that kind of here's potential for 3 power. It's a 1/1, but the Surveil is really nice for you to kind of filter and cycle through your draws a little bit. So that's why both lists are running it. And once it has that Delirium, that 4 or more card types, you get to be able to see it. So if you're looking into decks and are trying to get into Modern for the first time and wondering about decks to play, the Temur Prowess deck is relatively cheap. The Murktide is relatively cheap. I say that they're $400 to $500 for a deck. The land base is pretty much the most expensive stuff, with the exception of like the Ragavans and like Slick Shot Show Off, which is the newest card there. So, but we'll get into and talk a little bit. So the Murktide deck is all. Hey, we were just talking about Slick Shot Show Off. So our newest guy here, this thing is insane. We've been seeing it, of course, on arenas and standards and things like that, but it's got, of course, haste, which is awesome. Like, we normally are seeing stuff like Swift Spear as our prowess, but the fact that it has flying and you get +2, it's like prowess buffed. And then it's got that plot mechanic, which we're not seeing right now, but it could be relevant later on. So immediately take some damage. Let's clear it off. And it's going to be a lot of that back and forth between both these lists because they both are running bolts. They're both going to be trying to kind of remove each other's threats and try to kind of keep one on the battlefield as much as possible. The Murktide has a little bit more in that removal aspect than the Temur Prowess list does. Now, every now and again, you'll see Temur Prowess lists run mutagenic growths and stuff like that to kind of go even more all in. We are not seeing that with this version of it. This is kind of the more traditional, straightforward style of play here, but we'll see. Oh, they're all joking right now because that is the Surveil land, and we are utilizing it as a scry land, essentially, and putting it on the bottom instead of on the top there. And so it's like, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, that goes to the graveyard. That seems to be like the number one missed trigger or missed ability that we're seeing from players with these new Surveil lands is that, oh, I just put this on the bottom, right? No, goes to your graveyard. Expressive Iteration is utilized in both decks. It's a great setup card. It's really kind of allowing you to kind of hit land drops for both decks. It's also kind of helping you to set up and prepare for, next couple turns, right? You look at 3 cards, one goes into exile, one goes to your hand, one goes onto the bottom, so a little bit more filtering in that regard, and then you are set up to be like, well, I haven't played my land yet, right? I can play this card from exile this turn, or if you have a 1-drop threat or something like that, you can be able to throw that away and be able to do it, or in the case of using Mishra's Bauble, you can be able to throw that. Both lists are running it, so that's why this is like as almost a mirror matchup without being a mirror matchup. Murktide, of course, does have that big goal of eventually utilizing all the cards in the graveyard to cast a Murktide reagent. You also get access to Counterspell, which the Temur Prowess list does not. So right now we're seeing basically both players do the same kind of thing. Right? They're very close in life totals here. We're in this kind of interesting dynamic of just kind of trying to navigate things and set up, land a threat, and try to kind of close out the game the best they can without putting too much of their shields down to kind of get blown out by, a removal spell or a counter spell or things like that. But Delirium would be active, I believe. At this point, we've got creature, land, instant, and sorcery in the graveyard. So that is, of course, 3 flying coming across there. Expressive Iteration, Preordain, in addition to having Dragon Rage Channeler, is so nice because it's just like you get to look at additional cards. So like right here. So we're seeing that initial, hey, do I care about that? Nope. Throw that in the graveyard, which is one of the removals that the Prowess deck runs, is that Lava Dart there, which does have a flashback, but you have to sacrifice a land to be able to utilize it. So allows us to kind of dig through a little bit more, which I'm assuming we've got Prowess or Delirium at this point. Yep. The Prowess player said I was going up, not down. Soulscar Mage is one of the other ones, so we're starting to see a couple others, but that will not resolve as Counterspell. We'll make quick work of that, but Soulscar Mage kind of has double duty in this list. Not only is it a Prowess threat, but it also has that ability to kind of put -1 counters on things when you're utilizing those quote-unquote burn spells, right? Lava darts, lightning bolts, things like that, to kind of start picking away at those threats there. All right, so we're going to see some bobbles taking place. Surveil, throw that. Looks like a land to the graveyard there. Yeah, so Subtlety we see in Murktide's hand. It looks like it's fine as a card. It doesn't really do much in this matchup, right? Yes, you could be able to sit there and play it, return a spell or creature to your, or even Planeswalker, right? Just return a spell, right? To the top or the bottom of your opponent's library. They get to be able to pick, though. When it enters the battlefield, it's 3/3 flying. Really, it's like I'm going to pay 4 mana or pitch a blue spell to now trade something off. I don't know. It's meh. It's probably going to get sideboarded out for other threats or other more beneficial cards. But yeah, here we go. There's the bolts. We're going through there. 3 more damage coming across. Got the Delirium, so he does fly. So they're just confirming life totals real quick. And yeah, so that's the other thing. It's like some Murktide players are running the Brazen Borrower's main. Some do them sideboard and some variation. I'm actually on the Tasha's Tidebinder main and have, I just like that card a lot. It's being at like the 4 or 5 mana is really kind of that sweet spot that you want to be with a Murktide list. Both of them are very low land counts, so that's why they are in that $400 to $500 range, is because they're not running as many as other lists. You're only running like 18, 19 lands depending on what list you might be at. So we're already seeing a little bit of -1 counters going on here. So that was that going to sacrifice some lands ability, or we've got the Lava Dart here, so we can start dealing 1 damage, and because the Soulscar Mage is there, that puts a -1 counter on that creature. So just trying to kind of math it out to kind of keep yourself alive as much as possible, see how well this can work. And Brazen Borrower. Let's return that non-land permanent to an opponent's hand. And then, of course, you could be able to cast it. It's currently on an adventure. We're just leaving it there. It kind of looks like it's on the battlefield, but it's not actually on the battlefield. It's adventuring right now. You have to pay 3 to be able to cast it. So we'll do a little setup. Again, you got to Surveil, throw that land in the graveyard, scry 2, draw a card. Looks like a monkey and another Subtlety here. I mean, you could go for both. right? You have a subtlety there. Yeah, it looks like both will be set up there, and we're just kind of building up a nice set of like counter magic available to us here. So it's coming at you for 2. We see a Vapor Snag in hand for the Temur Prowess player, and is in that debate phase, right? It's like, okay, do I pull the trigger now? I like the Vapor Snag in there, and looks like debating. So Vapor Snag it's unsummoned, but it deals a damage. Bing, bing, bing. Attempt to Vapor Snag it. It says, yeah, that's fine. We're fine with that. Do we recast it? Yeah, that's fine too. So it's like we could have gone for like a subtlety play here, but like that doesn't help us. And this lets us now have the ability. All right, do we recast Brazen Borrower here because it does have flash? We can cast it on their opponent's end step here, or do we just have the counter spell? So we have a lot of options. We're not really threatened at this point. Yes, Skullscar Mage is going to come across right now for 1. Lots of lands, which are going to start being sacrificed. So yeah, we see boom. Let's do sack this mountain, flash this back, put a damage on it. Prowess trigger. Now it's a 2/3 versus your 2/2. Just that power of that 2 toughness that you're like Swift Spears and Soulscar Mage both are those 1/2, so they do get that. So yeah, there's the cast of the Brazen Borrower here, and now we're going to see the next Lava Dart come in, shoot that out of the sky. That's the downside of having the 1 toughness creatures, but we still got some stuff to work with. Got the counter spell to help protect you, but the danger is the Soulscar Mage being out, right? And there's another, that's the 3rd one. We're going to attempt to, but we get met with the counter spell, which I think is fine here. Like, your opponent is now down to 2 lands. Oh, that's even worse. Okay. The monkey gets in for damage because we dashed it, and now we get to cast the Slick Shot Show Off here. I mean, a Murktide player is not normally going to be running this card, but now that you've been able to steal it from your opponent, you're feeling great. Because you're already full of, like, cantrips and other stuff already, so it's like, yeah, look at this. We drew a Preordain, so it's like, yeah, trigger. Let's set up, it's a Murktide and a monkey. You could do the, like, double dash Ragavan swing with that and, like, close out the game, but that's like the risky move, right? Assuming your opponent, he has 1 card in hand, you're assuming they don't have any burn spell because, you know, they clean up your stuff and then maybe they draw something. So this is like, okay, monkey, swing in, we get a block going. We take the damage off the Slick Shot, which is 3, go to 2. They have no creature now. And there's the Murktide. Yep, that'll just be met with a scoop up. So game number 1 going to our Murktide player. Murktide player's like, that guy's tight. Let's, that's pretty cool. And that's the thing. It's like a lot of players are navigating and testing out the prowess list and trying to find that sweet spot with it. Like I said, there have been some variations where people are going more all in and trying out like the mutagenic growths, but things get a little bit scarier when we go to the sideboard action, because if you are the Temur Prowess player, you get access to things like Pick Your Poison and these other ways to kind of utilize your skills to deal with the Murktides. All right, Unholy Heat comes out. We're going to start seeing a little bit of chip damage coming with that initial prowess. But, again, it's going to be both of these players are really trying to utilize that board control with removal. Try to take as little damage as possible with these little swings back and forth and hope that they can land a threat long enough to close out the game. The Murktide has that advantage of being able to land a much bigger threat. It's harder post-board like we talked about with Pick Your Poison. So we're going to see how things go. Who was actually going to be able to land a threat quicker than the other one? We're already starting to see Unholy Heat come into play. But we'll see how things work out as Soulscar Mage gets played, leaving the mana up to potentially do some additional damage. And you see that this is the difference between some players. They don't want to get blown out, right? There is that chance that, okay, maybe my opponent brought in Brotherhood's End or these kind of like deal 3 damage to each creature type effects. So I have to be kind of maybe worried about that. You know, I don't want to go all in and just throw all my creatures if I have them. But it's also that question of, do you have all these creatures? Because really the Temur Prowess deck runs a few more creatures than the Murktide player. Oh, nice little Spell Pierce. That was nice. So we do see kind of the attempted to burn down the Soulscar Mage not happening. Looks like Stern Scolding, which is a nice little sideboard card, Expressive Veneration here, but no land drop. So now we're kind of in this like, okay, how much damage? The shields are sort of down. You tried to kill my creature, didn't work. Let's just kind of poke you down for 1. Not committing. Neither player is really committing. Ooh, now we're seeing the plot. Okay, so it's this weird effect. You exile it face up, so both players know what it is. Cast it for 2. Well, you're not even casting it. You're plotting it for 2, so it's exiled face up. And then at a later turn of your choosing, you can then just cast it for the price of for free. So it does have that nice little, hey, this exists. Be aware. Be scared. When the kind of coast is clear and you've used a lot of your removal, I might bring this out. Or if I have a nice explosive turn, I can kind of have a big aggressive swing. So this expressive iteration here is like that hunt. I'm searching for a land drop, it looked like here. And that is a painful, like any other time, you'd be very happy seeing that. But now you're like, I have to set it up. It looks like there was a land that was drawn here. Steam Vents from that turn. So that kind of sets up with the nice, okay, I can guarantee to at least cast my monkey this turn, and I was able to get at least a 1-drop there. But that was almost like a rough time where you're sitting here going, well, I don't have, you know, any way to cast these 2-drops, so I put a counterspell on the bottom, expressive to my hand, and we'll kind of set up for the kind of next stage of things. All right, so now, is this the let's go for the explosive turn here? Looks like it, especially knowing that your opponent has tapped out. So it's like, yes, you have to be aware there is the potential for subtlety, but that's kind of about it. And there's the bolt to kind of clear the path, and we see a big swing in here. 5 total, is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, big swing, big swing. All right, so this could be that danger spot of, all right, does my opponent have a way to kind of clear the board? Do they have that Brotherhood End? You know, how's that going to work? Spell Pierce, of course, is a sideboard card, so we were able to see that get added in here. You already saw it once. There is that kind of worry maybe it's going to happen again if I try to go for some removal. Do we go and dig and hope to land a Murktide here? So this, of course, will help fuel us. So let's try and fuel here. Haven't played a land yet, so we know the land's going to be up there unless you are feeling greedy for some reason. I don't know if there was a removal spell. Looked like there was. Yeah, so there's the land.
I don't think so. I think you get Scalding Turn.
Oh, did we already play a land? Oh, we might have. We might have played the Scalding Turn this turn. So we do the Dragon Rage as our exiled card.
Okay, I don't know. That's fine. Yeah, because what'd you cast last turn? Last turn was Ragavan.
All right, let me know, guys. Were you paying enough attention? Because I like lost track for a second. So now they're deciding. They're deciding whether or not they played a land, and I wasn't paying enough attention to remember. But I want to say yes, the Scalding Tarn was played this turn. But leave a comment. Let me know. Were we wrong? Did we mess up already? Who knows? All right, so this is the Dragon Rage Chandler gets played. We have the mana for Stern Scolding in case our opponent does that, and we're in the hope that they don't have a way to kill us here, which is a risky position to be in. Even if we play the Murktide here, or yeah, maybe the Murktide would have been the play, right? because that's at least a big body. But I think it was like the brain of like, okay, I don't know. Maybe the Soulscar Mage is enough of a deterrent here that we can hope for the best. But there looks like a bolt in hand. Clear that up. Want to go for 5, assuming that there's no additional pumps. There's a Preordain, which would be a total of 8. All right, so that's an additional +2 off that slick shot. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 for Xaxes. Yep, Xaxes. Man, slick shot getting +2 instead of +1 is nuts. All right, tied up 1-1 here. I mean, kind of got caught up on lands a little bit there for the Murktide player. We did get to see a little bit of that nice protection with the Spell Pierce, but for the most part, that game 1 was a lot of the Murktide player being able to just kind of, okay, effectively deal with threats, be able to, you know, grind things out, trade resources efficiently until we can get into the later stages, drop a Murktide, and profit. Where that one was the Temur Prowess deck really doing what it's trying to do, get some threats in early, chip away at damage, have a nice explosive turn with a slick shot, and kind of go from there. We're going to set things up with a nice Preordain. Really, if you're running the Murktide, opening up with a turn 1 play is kind of that ideal position, whether you're opening up with a Dragon Rage Channeler, a Ragavan, or a Preordain. If you don't have one of those in your opening hand, you know, you might be feeling a little bit worse for wear. So be aware of that if you're starting to pilot and learn the deck. The Temur Prowess, it seems like the way that your hands are going is you just need to make sure that you have one of your creatures in your opening hands. I'm wondering if it's one of those similar feels to like Infect, where you're like, okay, I just need to make sure I have a creature and a way to be able to do something with it. All right, another setup turn it looks like here. Dragon Rage Chandler was out for the Temur Prowess player, and we put both on the bottom. One of those was our Brazen Borrower, which I like having in there. It's not one I would sideboard out because of the bounce effect is going to be pretty relevant. Once your opponent commits a lot of resources into pumping a creature, you're going to be feeling good about being like, okay, I'm going to bounce your slick shot. All right. Dragon's Rage Chandler, DRC coming in for a little pokey, and then Soulscar Mage is the kind of follow-up here. But we're seeing no additional lands coming out. We're getting a lot of information, right? We're scrying a lot. We've done 2 Preordains. Here's an Unholy Heat to kind of clear up some pathway, but being stuck on lands is not a good feeling. Steam Vent's coming off that fetch, setting things up. I don't know. If you're in the Temur Prowess player, like that advantage is now feeling good. You're on your side here, and this could be a spot for you to capitalize on, right? You could be able to sit here and poke in. I saw the glimpse of the slick shot, but it's like, all right, if I don't have good lands, let's do another plot and set up for another explosive turn later, which is, you know, having that ability is nice to kind of do these pivots. But there's the land. There's the, of course, Unholy Heat to clear up. I mean, okay, I know that there's a threat coming out. I've got to kind of continue to trade resources and set up. Oh, he was ready to cast it. He was trying to cast it on his upkeep. Ooh, did you see that? In his hand, a Stern Scolding. You saw him already like ready to do it. He's like, okay, I'm ready. So, slick shot, show off coming out here. Power and toughness 1/2. Was able to be cast off the plot, but there's the Stern Scolding in response here. So that's that Lord of the Rings one, counter target creature spell with power or toughness 2 or less, which is very powerful in Modern when we think about a lot of the stuff. Even like people casting like Orcish Brewmasters, right? Those are 1/1, so you can be able to just kind of 1 mana get rid of it. So we're going to be kind of rebuilding, setting up here as a lot of our threats have been shaved away. Remember, Temur Prowess is running about 16 or so creatures. So losing a couple initially is a little bit painful, so we've got to be able to set up enough to kind of make something happen for here. But our opponent casting our expressive iteration is a nice sign for us, going, okay, you're spending your turn setting up as well, and you've kind of let your guard down a little bit so I can attempt to be able to do stuff, especially now where they're completely tapped out. Ooh, not all of the cards in there. Lots of sorcery, so it's a 1/1. So Lava Dart actually very effective here to kind of clean up the Dragon Rage Channeler. Because normally it's a 1/1. If you have Delirium and all 4 different card types, then you can be set up nicely. So was not the case here. All right, life total checks, 12 to 16.
I think 4, but I'm going to double check here in a second.
What do we got to work with? Shields are down. We got to hope that there's not... I mean, 12 life is not a lot of life here. So a Slick Shot, a Bobble. There's a Slick Shot. What else we got to work with? There's a Bolt. There's the Swing in for 1 right now. Yeah, just 1. Okay, here's a Murktide at least, so we can kind of, try to clear the path. Attempt to be bolting the Slick Shot. Now, if you're running like the mutagenic growth and stuff like that, you could do the attempt to save it there, but you shave off of things like, I know some lists are running Unholy Heats in there, so if you're not, that would be your like replacement for it, but let's do some exiling. Looks like we're going to exile 3 instants and sorceries. You're keeping some in there for any follow-up Murktides that could come out. You don't want to, like, all in on 1 because it's like, all right, I want to have a threat, but I want to be able to still make a threat scarier later. But there's your pick your poison. Sacrifice a creature with flying. And Dragon Rage Channeler coming out there. A little bit of sequencing things that just to note here. I mean, when you're in it, you're fast, you're moving. You like it's not that big of a deal, but you could have gotten that little bit of Surveil if you cast that first and then cast Pick Your Poison. It's all the same in the end, right? Other than being able to see 1 card. But ooh, okay. So Bolt clears things up. Second Murktide coming out here, and we'll do some. And it's also a thing to note is when you're playing the Murktide list, you want to get instants and sorceries to make the Murktide bigger, and that's why we go big Murktide here. So that's 8 power right there. The thing is, you also have to kind of consider, do I need to prioritize keeping specific cards in my graveyard? Another one, pick your poison. Sacrifice a flying creature. But what I was trying to say before we were rudely interrupted by Pick Your Poison is that you have to think about prioritizing, or you don't necessarily have to do it all the time, but you have to at least put that consideration in. Do you care about Delirium, right? There's only 4 artifacts in the Murktide list. So that's at least a guaranteed Delirium piece. It's very easy to get instants and sorceries in there. Less so for creatures, but lands are usually okay. So it's like, try to keep your artifacts in your graveyard as much as possible if you're piloting the Murktide, because it's harder to be able to get those in there to get the Delirium. But this is what we were talking about, is we're in that trading of resources now, and now we're both trying to kind of resolve a threat or find a threat. Whoever gets the threat first and is able to stick it is going to be able to kind of close out this game here. We've seen 2 Murktides get played. Neither have been able to stick around, but there's an initial threat that we're seeing with the monkey coming out. Ragavan is going to be hitting the field, not dash, just kind of there. Let's see how the response. Cards in hand, a bunch. And he says 3. Yeah, he was taking a look at some of the exiled cards there, so we do see a couple. Looks like a couple options to go with. Expressive Iteration again. There's a Bolt coming out. Clears that up. A Flusterstorm. That's what that is. Okay. All right, let's try an Expressive. Well, This choice is pretty easy. You have 2 lands and a Murktide. Murktide goes to hand. We're at 10 life, so it's safer to get the tap land. Yeah, so we take the tap land, put the Scalding Tarn at the bottom. I don't know if we cast Murktide here, but looks like that's the choice. We're trying to stick a threat. I mean, your opponent's what, at like 3 cards in hand? This is our 3rd Murktide. The whole thing, it's like, yes, can we resolve this? Because I don't think he only had Flusterstorm, which is not worth keeping your mana untapped for at this point. So, like, if we get this Murktide out, we can potentially win the game here. Right? An uncontested Murktide. Pretty much the only answer that our opponent has is pick your poison. And that's one way to get pick your poison back. Underworld Breach. So here's what we were talking about earlier about that line of, hey, Dragon Rage Channeler helps fuel your graveyard. Underworld Breach is going to make a big difference. Because now you can start casting things from your graveyard. And that will be able to escape out that pick your poison. Hey, please sacrifice a flying creature. And now it's that question of, okay, what am I going to exile to escape this out? And the creatures, of course, are the choices there. And that's one thing to note about the Temur Prowess list. They're running usually 2 Underworld Breaches. They do, of course, have to sacrifice it at the end, so it gives your stuff escape and allows you to say, well, I need to try to keep as many instants and sorceries in my graveyard to be able to utilize it. Those bigger things like the Slick Shot, it's unlikely that I'm going to be casting that with Underworld Breach in these situations, so let's try to at least get a 1-drop out there. And I believe he probably has Delirium at this point. Now, does our Murktide player, though, he's exiled a lot of cards from his graveyard. Ooh, we saw a little cycle land there. Sacrifice it, draw a card. Unholy Heat, Counterspell. Have enough to do both. You're trying to hold the Unholy Heat for the Slick Shot or something like that. Oh, must not have Delirium. Interesting. Or he's maybe trying to do something else. I don't know. All right, Expressive Iteration here is going to be coming across. Let's do a nice little setup. And forcing the Flusterstorm out. That's actually kind of the best case scenario. It's the 2nd spell this turn, so we are going to be putting 2 basically copies of Flusterstorm on Expressive Iteration saying, hey, counter it unless you pay 2. That also, like, guarantees shutting off our opponent from casting a 2nd spell this turn based on the mana that they have. Surveil first. Throw a Spell Pierce in the graveyard. Let's do 3. 1 goes to hand. Mishra's Bauble. That's like one of the best case scenarios that you can get for an exiled card. Let's cast it. Trigger. Throw a land in the graveyard. Let's get information about what you're doing. Look at your top card. And then let's refuel. Up creep, we draw, and our Murktide player draws into a land. So it's like, hey, no point in hiding this in hand. You already know I have it. Let's play it. Still don't have Delirium. 3 out of 4. We know we're going to take 3 this turn. Go to 4. Hope there's no bolt or no Slick Shot to kill us. I mean, we have the lightning, or we have the counter spell if a Slick Shot tried to come out here, though. Yeah, it goes to 4. Let's crack it. What else do you got hiding on top? A regular old Soul Scar. Yeah, it's basically we're looking for any additional threat to counter at this point. Ooh, we're going to add Gigantha to our hand. Of course, the companion got errata to pay 3, return it, or take it from the exile spot and put it in your hand. Preordain, let's do some setups here. We're going to try to get things set up. Now, one thing to note, if you're trying to fill up your graveyard and get Delirium, if the Sorcerer was the last thing that would put you to that position, you want to be doing this on main phase 2. All right? You don't want to start, like, there's no benefit of you doing it on main phase 1 other than, oh, if you have a second Dragon Rage Channeler. But I don't know. I still think doing it main phase 2 makes a lot of sense, because then you can sit here and be able to have 2 blockers in the off chance that they have some flash shenanigans. But look at this. Hey, here's I'm going to flash back this Lava Dart, put you to 3, and cast this Lightning Bolt and just kill you. So those are those lines that, you know, the Temur Prowess players are starting to see and understand. Okay, within this window of like 4 or 5 life, if I can just get you down to 4 or 5 life, I have these lava darts that I can start flinging at your face there. So very tough. I mean, really, that last game, it was very close, went to 3 games. The last one really just came down to pick your poison. Casting it 3 times to get rid of 3 Murktides was crazy there. But hope you guys have been enjoying the content. Make sure you're subscribing, following, all that kind of good stuff. Of course, deck lists are in the description for you to be able to see what these deck lists look like. But we'll be seeing you on Thursday for another episode, and then, of course, the following Monday. Thanks so much for tuning in and watching, and I'll see you all next game.